Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about my 2025 credit card strategy. I made a video all about credit cards back in 2022, the first year that I had my channel. So it's been 3 years since then, and I thought I would do an updated version of that video because I feel like my credit card strategy has changed a bit since then. But if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it in the description below. I still highly recommend watching that video if you're new to credit cards because it's a really thorough explanation of what credit cards are, how they work, what the fees are. So if you're new to credit cards, please watch that first because I don't think I'll be so thorough in this video. This video is mainly focused on what has changed since I made that last video and what cards I'm currently using. But for today's video, I want to talk about what cards I'm currently using, what is my strategy, if you will, and I just want to share some thoughts about how my thinking around this topic has changed over the last 3 years. I'll have some timestamps in the description so it'll be more organized. Let's start with the first topic, and that is why I use credit cards. I have 3 main reasons for using a credit card. The first one is fraud protection. So in the event of any fraudulent transactions, my money in my bank account is protected compared to if I were to use a debit card where every transaction I make is money directly debiting from my bank account. So if I were to lose my card, somebody could have access to my bank account directly through my debit card. But with a credit card, because the bank pays for it first, it's more easily reversible and my bank account is not affected. So I would say that is the most important factor in using a credit card for me. The second reason is to build my credit score. A credit card allows me to build a borrowing history with the bank, and how reliably I am able to pay off my credit card bill is a measure of how reliable I am to the bank. So in the future, if I need to take a personal loan, which I hope I don't, but in case I do, I could get potentially a bigger loan and a better interest rate because I have a good credit score with the bank. When you use a debit card, you don't create a borrowing history, and so you don't have a credit score or a good credit score. So that might affect how much loan you are able to get in the future, say if you're buying a house and you need a bank loan, and the kind of interest rate that the bank is willing to give you. Then the third and final reason is of course the rewards. This is both the credit card rewards and also the sign-up bonuses for the card. I talked about this in a lot of detail in my previous video, but quite self-explanatory. The rewards are like the cashback or the miles that you get from using the card. A credit card typically has better rewards than, say, a debit card. So that's also a big reason why I use credit cards. These are things like their cashback or their miles. And since you'll be spending the money anyway, as you would on a debit card or with cash, it's nice to get some rewards out of it on your regular day-to-day spending. So in summary, those are the reasons why I use a credit card: for fraud protection, for credit score, and for rewards. Then I also have a personal checklist for credit cards. These are like my preferences for the kinds of credit cards that I like to use. I have 3 main requirements. So the first one is that it fits my normal spending habits, patterns, and lifestyle. So for myself, I prefer cashback cards over miles cards. I think I just prefer getting a cashback at the end of every month rather than accumulate points or miles to redeem later. My second requirement is also that the reward system are straightforward and easy to understand. If you've shopped around for a credit card, you would have noticed that some credit cards have very straightforward, no minimum spend, you get this amount of cashback every month, and some cards are like you get this amount of cashback for this category and then this for this category, and then there's a cap on each category. So there's a range of reward systems for different credit cards, but you can sort of tell like a certain type of reward system, like the ones that I just mentioned. Then my final requirement is that there is a good app experience or customer service experience. There are many different banks, and some banks have better customer service and apps than other banks. So I've tried many cards over the last 3 years, and I know generally which banks I prefer in terms of their user experience on the app and how their customer service talks to you on the phone. So that is something really important to me as well, because if something happens and you need to contact their customer service, you would want them to be helpful and also effective. And don't forget the quality of their app user experience also, because you might have to check into their app regularly to check on your bill or make payment. So if their app is awful to look at and to use, that affects your experience of using their credit card. Or at least it's important to me because I've been annoyed many times when their app is frustrating to use. So that does affect whether or not I want to keep using their card in the long term. So in summary, those are my criteria for credit cards. It needs to fit my spending, the rewards are consistent and easy to understand, and the app experience and customer service must be good. I'll elaborate a bit more on my first point, which was how a credit card can fit my normal spending habits, patterns, and lifestyle. So what exactly do I spend on? So for myself, I put almost everything on a credit card except for insurance. Insurance I pay by gyro because insurance is a common exclusion for credit cards, so you can't get cashback or rewards on them. So I put everything else besides insurance on a credit card, like my public transport, my food and groceries, my shopping, and also my house utilities. I also give my mother a supplementary card, so that is her card for public transport, for groceries, and for her own shopping as well. So both my mother and I spend about 1k to 1.5k in total combined expenses in a month. Alright, so now that we have the background on my personal checklist for credit cards and what my spending is actually like, let's talk about the current cards that I have in rotation. So my very first card, my daily driver, is this DBS Live Fresh card. So this is the very first credit card that I got when I started working, and it's still my main credit card today. The benefits have changed slightly over the years. So if you watch my first video, the rewards are slightly different than it is now. And when they changed the reward system, I was almost going to cancel the card because I was quite upset that they changed it. But ultimately, I think it still suits my lifestyle really well, and I think that forced me to reconsider my reasons for using a credit card in the first place and why I'm now making this video, because I realized at the end of the day that it's more than just the rewards that I get from the credit card. I'm really reluctant to change cards because my mother also has a supplementary card, and to get her to change to a different card is quite a hassle. And also the way that I pay my credit card bills, I'm used to the DBS iBanking system where I can see both my transactions and my mother's transactions easily, and so I'm really reluctant to change that system. And the rewards for this card is still not too bad. For DBS Live Fresh, it's 6% cashback on shopping and transport, capped at $50 and $20 respectively. And the rest is 0.3%, but that's like nothing. So basically, it's capped at about $70 a month. But there is a minimum spend of $800 on this card. So unless you spend at least $800 every month, this might not be a good card for you, because then you'll only get a base cashback of 0.3%. But if you spend at least $800 every month and your main bank account is with DBS, like with DBS Multiplier, then the card fits very well into the DBS ecosystem because you can see your credit card bill and pay it off very easily through the app. There are all the standard exclusions like utilities and insurance, and there is also an annual fee of about $200 every year, but I can always waive the annual fee through the DBS iBanking website. So I've never paid annual fees on any of my credit cards because I always request to waive them, and they will waive them because the bank wants you to keep using the card. So that is my first credit card, and I really like it. I don't see myself changing credit cards unless there is an even better DBS credit card, because I just prefer to stay within the DBS ecosystem because both my mother and I have bank accounts with DBS. So I use DBS for 95% of all my expenses. So that is my DBS Live Fresh. Then my other two cards, I have specific uses for them, which I'll talk about now. So the next card I'll talk about is my DCS Platinum Mastercard. So this card is from Diners Club, which is a very old credit card company. Like I remember when I was young, I would see the Diners Club logo everywhere, but then they disappeared for a while when Visa and Master became more popular, and then now they've rebranded to DCS. I could be wrong, but they were heavily marketing it, and they were giving out, the free luggage. There was that free, what brand was it? But it was a blue and yellow luggage. So that was what compelled me to want to apply for the card, to get the free luggage. And also it's a no minimum spend card, and you get 2% cashback, which is the highest that I know of all the no minimum spend credit cards. Like there's the Amex credit card, which is 1.5, the Citi Cashback Plus, which is 1.6. I think Marybank credit card is 1.7%, but DCS is still the highest at 2%. There's a cap at $200 cashback, but that means you have to spend $10,000 on the card, which I have never spent $10,000 on a credit card before. But besides that, this is the highest in cashback. So if you really want a no cashback cap, this is not the card. But if you're never going to spend more than 10k in a month, it's a really good credit card for you, especially if you spend very little every month or you have variable expenditure throughout the month. The DCS card also has an annual fee, but I've managed to waive it before. Oh, I forgot to mention, the cashback for both the DBS Live Fresh and the DCS card is credited to your credit card bill automatically, so it just offsets your credit card bill. which is quite convenient because the cashback is just automatically redeemed. I've had some cards where you had to manually redeem it and it's more troublesome than just having it be automatic. So what I use the DCS card for is actually for my joint expenses with my partner. So the card is in my name, but we have this card on both our phones and we use it for all our shared expenses like meals and cab rides or movie tickets, and I'm the one who pays it off at the end of every month, so I manage the card. It's just that we have it on both our phones. Oh, and I pay off the card with our joint account, which I mentioned and talked about in my previous budget video. We've used this system for the past 5 years, and it works out really well because then everything by default is split between the two of us. So the card not having a minimum spend also works out really well for us because between the two of us, our shared expenses are about $400 every month. So not enough for the higher cashback cards, but we can still get 2% cashback. So that's the main use for this card. But besides the joint account expenses, I think it's good to have a no minimum spend card under my belt for this reason. So I use my DBS Live Fresh most of the time for all my expenses, but there is a cashback cap. And typically I don't really care if I hit the cap or not, unless I am buying something that is very, very high value. So for example, in the last 3 years, I've had to buy 2 new mattresses, one for my mother, one for me. And each mattress plus the bed frame is almost $2,000. So rather than pay with my DBS Live Fresh, where I will max out and hit the cap very quickly, I can put it on the no minimum spend card and then get a flat 2% cashback. So for that reason, it might be useful to have one no minimum spend card to complement your card with a minimum spend but with cashback caps. So those 2 cards I use primarily in Singapore for my Singapore expenses. But for overseas expenses, both overseas as in travel and also online stores that are based overseas, I use my Trust cashback card. I used to have the Trust Link card. I had the silver one because I was an NTUC Union member. But I recently moved to the cashback card because, like I said, I just prefer cashback. The cashback on this is pretty dismal. It's 1%. There's been a lot of controversy with this card because of its marketing claims. Like, it claims you can get up to 15% cashback, but the conditions to get 15% is unattainable for most people using this card, I think. But effectively, you're getting 1% cashback on transactions on this card. But what I love about the Trust cards are that they have no fees on any of their cards, like no annual fee, no foreign transaction fee, and no ATM withdrawal fee. So that makes it a fantastic card, I think, to use overseas and for overseas online expenses. So for example, I buy things from iHerb quite frequently, but iHerb is considered a US store, and if I were to use my DBS Live Fresh, there'll be a small foreign transaction fee on my total bill. So using the Trust cashback card where there is no foreign transaction fees has saved me quite a bit of money, especially if you frequently order from overseas online stores. And then also it's good for overseas travel because you can withdraw money from your Trust bank account from the ATM, and there's no ATM fees on Trust side, but there might be withdrawal fees on the overseas bank side. But at least I get to save a bit compared to if I were to use a regular credit card. I know a lot of people like Utrip or Revolut, any of those prepaid multi-currency debit cards, but personally I like the convenience of a credit card. So ever since the Trust card came out, I've switched over and I haven't used my Utrip or my Revolut since, and I've closed those accounts also. And there's also no minimum spend on this card. Besides using it overseas, I also put my subscriptions on this card, like my YouTube Premium, my Apple Store, just in case there are foreign transaction fees on those purchases. I don't think there are, but just in case, so I just put them on this card. So those are the 3 cards that I use on a regular basis. It's been really nice just having these 3 cards in my wallet, both my physical and my digital wallet. And I'll talk about why I choose to close my other credit cards. If you remember from my first video, I talked about having 5 credit cards at one point, and I had different users for each credit card. But recently, I've been trying to be more minimalist with my finances, and I felt like streamlining my credit cards was the next easy step for me to take. And I mentioned how DBS changed their reward system a few months back, and that also sparked my rethinking about why I have certain credit cards and what the true use of a credit card is for me. There's this principle called Pareto's principle, which states that 20% of your efforts contribute to 80% of the outcomes. So that's just a more efficient way of thinking about how you delegate your efforts. And I was thinking that could apply to my work life, my personal life, and also my financial life. And I think I'm just in a phase of life where I feel like the sense of cashback that I get from keeping a card open is not worth the hassle of keeping it, of having to go into a separate account to check my credit card bill and pay it off, to remember to waive my annual fee every year, just of having another credit card to think about. So for example, my Amex card. I mentioned in my previous video that I love that card because it was very no-nonsense, straight 1.5% cashback on everything, including like hospital bills even, and no minimum spend, and customer service was always so polite, and the app was so straightforward. I'm still a huge fan of Amex credit card, but I was looking back on my expense tracker because I do write down the cashback that I get from that card every month, and I use that card for my utilities, so my water and gas, my electricity, my Wi-Fi, because those transactions don't get cashback on my DBS Live Fresh. I would put insurance on it also, but my insurance company back then didn't accept Amex cards. So I was holding on to that card specifically for that reason, for utilities. But the cashback that I was getting from the transactions I was putting on it was like $1 at most every single month, and after 3 years I felt like it was starting to become a bit redundant, and I don't really value that extra dollar every month in exchange for keeping the card open and having to check the app every single month. It just became something that I didn't want to do anymore. So for me, it was starting to feel like the hassle outweighed the benefits that I got, the benefits being a few cents to $1 every single month, and I just wanted to free up that extra bit of time and just have my utilities billed to my DBS Live Fresh even though it won't earn me cashback. So yeah, that was kind of the realization I came to a few months ago after 5 years of being on this financial journey. I think for myself, I'm trying to not overcomplicate things so much. And I've always said, like, your cards should serve you and your lifestyle, not the other way around. So that's why, get a minimum spend card only if you can hit that minimum spend comfortably every single month. But if you're going out of your way to spend more on a card to get points or cashback, then I think that kind of defeats the purpose of using your card to get rewards. And I'm also guilty of wanting to min-max my card strategy, and I've spent hours trying to read up on all these different cards and figure out if I can use them somehow. But most of the time, I always come back to the same conclusion, and that is my current system is the best system for me right now in the past 3 years, and that's why I'm still using the DBS Live Fresh card. Like, I found the best card for me, and I have not changed since then. And it's also more than just the rewards on the card, it's also how it fits in your overall financial system. Like I mentioned how I stick to DBS because I use DBS Bank and it's just easiest for me and my mother, and how I plan both our finances together to stick with DBS Live Fresh for now. And of course, it's worthwhile to spend a couple hours to do some research into what card you think will work best for you. If I hadn't done that work 5 years ago, then I wouldn't have the knowledge I have now to make this decision in the first place. So I'm grateful to my past self for putting in that effort. But at the same time, I don't think that you're losing out big time if you don't have a credit card strategy that maximizes your spending habits. I think this is kind of like a perfect case of FOMO and the law of diminishing returns. The more effort you put into it doesn't necessarily result in better savings or a better outcome. Which is also why I've been resistant to playing the miles game for the longest time. Like I mentioned, I really love cashback cards, and I really tried to understand why people love miles cards so much and why they keep talking about it. And I was thinking, maybe, is there something I don't understand? Is there something I'm not doing right? Like, why is it so popular? Then I started to feel a bit FOMO, and that's why I spent a lot of time looking into it, thinking if I should switch my strategy to a miles strategy. But with miles also, I think I read that to make a meaningful redemption of your miles, you need to spend at least 1.5k to 2k a month. And I'm slightly below that, like my upper tier of spending is 1.5k a month. But most of the time it's about 1k to 1.2k. And I've even tried to calculate a return ticket to, say, Tokyo or Seoul, how many miles that would take and how much I have to spend to earn those miles. And it really wasn't worth it for me, the amount of time I have to save up to accumulate the miles that would allow me to redeem a flight. I think I could even accumulate my savings much faster than the time it would take me to accumulate miles. If you're a frequent flyer, then sure, but I'm just a small fry office worker. I go on holidays max twice a year and I fly budget all the time. And I go to the airport 2 hours before my flight. I don't need lounge access either, so at some point I just thought to myself, like, why am I putting in all this effort when I know for certain that it's not my lifestyle, and I'm bending over backwards trying to fit my lifestyle into this project of accumulating miles. So it was a realization that cemented my original conclusion of why I think miles is just not suited for me and why I always prefer cashback. So one final thing I want to say is, I'm not speaking to people who only have one credit card in their lives, like people who, I have friends like that who just want one card, like they're not into this whole world of maximizing credit cards like I was, and still kinda am. Like, though I'm speaking to people like me who love looking into this kind of thing, who want to try to make the best decision possible. And to those people, myself included, I think one thing I always have to remind myself is to have some perspective, because it's tempting to feel FOMO and like you must sort of min-max your life. But if I take a step back and try to have some perspective, I feel like life is too short to care about 0.1% more of cashback. And yeah, this is coming from somebody who used to have 5 to 7 credit cards, and I still currently have about 10 different accounts with different institutions on multiple platforms, which I'm looking to streamline as well. It's just that I'm starting with credit cards because it's the easiest. So when I start to feel that FOMO, what I do is that I remind myself the reason why I use a credit card in the first place, and that is fraud protection, credit score, and last is rewards. I always try to think of rewards last, because in the absence of rewards, fraud protection and credit score are still very good reasons to use a credit card. But the idea of rewards always cloud my judgment, and they are often never the whole truth either. Like, banks will always try to market their cards in a way that make the rewards seem better than they actually are. And realistically, you might not even achieve the rewards that the banks advertise. So I try to keep that in mind. And I also remind myself that playing the cashback or the miles game won't make me richer. Like, it won't make me wealthier. What will make me wealthier is improving my spending power, having good financial habits, not having the right credit card strategy. And it also won't make me richer in other aspects either, like not spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. And so what am I spending my time on then? I would rather spend that time with the people I love, or indulging in my hobbies, or even resting. I think that contributes to wealth in a different way. So that is just my own conclusion that I've come to after playing this credit card game. I'm just sharing my perspective, which is shaped also by the phase of life that I'm in. I'm thankful to my past self, who was so diligent in doing the research and putting in the work to understand credit cards and how they work and how they can fit in my life. But I think I can now reap the fruits of that labor and just rest and be okay with my 3 cards. Perhaps it might even go down to 1 card, but we'll see. All that to say, I hope you figure out your own system that works for you, and always try to remember your reason why for doing something, and if it's aligned with what you want in life. That's all. Thank you for listening to this video, and I'll see you in my next one.